The digital clock above Gate 47 in Los Angeles International Airport's Terminal C glowed a steady 6:32 p.m. Its red numerals cutting through the fluorescent haze of a bustling Friday evening in June 2025. The air terminal thrummed with the chaotic symphony of modern travel. The sharp clack of rolling suitcases, the muffled drone of boarding announcements, and the low murmur of conversations blending into a restless hum. Passengers darted between gates, their faces a mix of exhaustion and urgency. Business travelers in crisp suits, families wrangling toddlers, and solo adventurers clutching coffee cups. The air smelled faintly of jet fuel and overpriced pretzels. From the nearby food court, where neon signs flickered with promises of quick bites. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, the tarmac shimmered under the fading California sun. Planes taxiing with deliberate grace against a backdrop of distant mountains. At the heart of this controlled chaos sat Ava and Lila Carter, 17-year-old twin sisters, perched on sleek leather chairs near the gate. Their matching navy blazers and tailored trousers gave them an air of understated elegance, a stark contrast to the casual sweatshirts and leggings of most travelers. Ava, the slightly taller of the two, scrolled through her phone, her dark eyes scanning an email about the youth leadership conference they were attending in New York. Lila, her hair pulled into a neat bun, was engrossed in a group chat, her fingers flying across the screen as she laughed softly at a meme. Their luggage too sleek. Black roller bags with priority diamond status tags sat neatly beside them, glinting under the terminal's harsh lights. The tags, a subtle marker of their family's wealth and influence, went unnoticed by most, but not by everyone. Susan Hayes, a gate agent with 15 years at Lax, stood behind the check-in counter, her eyes narrowing as she watched the twins. Susan's navy uniform was crisp, her name tag polished, but her posture betrayed a restless unease. She adjusted her glasses, her lips pursing as she took in the girls' confident demeanor, their expensive outfits, their effortless poise. To Susan, they didn't belong, not in first class, not with that kind of self-assurance at their age. She'd seen every type of traveler in her career. The entitled executives, the harried parents, the scam artists trying to sneak into premium seats. Something about Ava and Lila, two young black women radiating a quiet authority, set her on edge. They were too polished, too composed, too expensive. "Excuse me, ladies," Susan called, her voice slicing through the terminal's din as she approached Gate 47. Her tone carried the clipped professionalism of someone accustomed to authority. But there was an edge to it, a hint of suspicion that made nearby passengers glance up from their phones. "I need to verify something about your tickets." Ava looked up, her expression calm but alert, like a chess player sizing up an opponent's opening move. She tucked a stray braid behind her ear and offered a polite smile. "Is there a problem?" she asked, holding up two first-class boarding passes, the QR codes catching the light. Lila set her phone down, her own smile mirroring her sister's, but with a flicker of wariness in her eyes. The twins exchanged a glance, a silent conversation honed by years of shared experiences. They'd been through moments like this before, moments where their presence in spaces deemed exclusive raised eyebrows. Their father, James Carter, had prepared them for it, his words echoing in their minds. "Stay calm, stay strategic, and never let them see you flinch." Susan's eyes flicked over the boarding passes, her fingers tightening around the edges as she scanned the details. "Seats 1A and 1B, she read aloud, her voice loud enough to draw the attention of a businessman in a gray suit nearby. "First class. How exactly did you purchase these tickets?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Susan's gaze lingered on Ava's blazer, as if the tailored fabric itself was evidence of something amiss. "With our credit cards," Lila replied evenly, her voice steady despite the growing weight of curious stares from other passengers. She reached into her pocket, pulling out a platinum American Express card embossed with her name, L. Carter. Ava mirrored the gesture, producing an identical card. The cards gleamed under the terminal lights, their metallic sheen a quiet testament to their legitimacy. Susan's lips twitched, a fleeting grimace betraying her disbelief. "I'm going to need additional verification," she announced, her voice rising to ensure others heard. "We've had issues with fraudulent bookings lately. Corporate policy requires us to be thorough." She crossed her arms, her foot tapping impatiently against the polished floor. The twins exchanged another glance, this one sharper, laced with the unspoken understanding that this wasn't about policy, it was about them. About their youth, their race, their audacity to occupy space Susan deemed beyond their reach. Around them, the terminal's rhythm faltered. A mother with 2 children paused her conversation, her eyes darting toward the scene. The businessman in the gray suit muttered something to his companion, who nodded and pulled out his phone, already filming. A young couple nearby whispered, their words inaudible, but their expressions a mix of curiosity and discomfort. Ava's fingers tightened around her phone, her heart rate quickening, though her face remained composed. She remembered a moment from 2 years ago, when she and Lila had been questioned at a high-end boutique, the clerk assuming they couldn't afford the designer bags they were browsing. Their father had stepped in then, his presence silencing the doubters. But today, James Carter was miles away, piloting his corporate jet, and the twins were on their own. "Stay calm," Ava told herself, her father's voice a steady anchor in her mind. "Use your head, not your emotions." Lila, sensing her sister's tension, made a subtle move. She opened Instagram on her phone, her thumb hovering over the live button. "Should I?" she whispered, so quietly only Ava could hear. Ava gave a barely perceptible nod. Lila tapped the screen, and the notification flashed. Lila_Carter_17 started a live video. Within seconds, 47 viewers joined, the number ticking upward as the app's algorithm caught the brewing tension. Comments began to trickle in. "What's going on? Why is she hassling them? This looks sketchy. Here's our confirmation email," Ava said, her voice calm but firm as she held up her phone, the screen displaying a detailed itinerary from Carter Enterprises' travel department. "And our credit card receipts. Everything's in order." Susan barely glanced at the screen, her eyes flicking back to the twins with a mix of skepticism and defiance. "These could be manipulated," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "We need to verify the payment source. You know, for irregular passengers." The word irregular landed like a slap, its weight unmistakable. Lila's hand trembled slightly, but she kept the phone steady, the camera capturing every word, every gesture. "Irregular?" Ava repeated, her voice still polite but now edged with steel. "Could you clarify what you mean by that?" She leaned forward slightly, her gaze locking onto Susan's. The gate agent faltered, her foot stopping mid-tap as she realized the crowd was growing. The businessman's companion was now openly filming, and the young couple had edged closer, their phones raised. The digital clock above ticked to 6:37 p.m. First-class boarding was 13 minutes away, and the tension at gate 47 was palpable. Susan straightened, her voice regaining its authority. "You know exactly what I mean," she said, her words sharp enough to cut through the terminal's hum. "We have to protect our premium passengers. Not everyone belongs in first class." The words hung in the air, a challenge laid bare. The livestream viewer count jumped to 247, then 356. The comments flooding faster. "This is so messed up. Is this really happening in 2025? Call someone. This is racism." Ava felt the weight of every stare, every whispered judgment, but she held her ground. Her father's lessons anchoring her. Document everything. Let the truth speak for itself. Across the terminal, a woman in a navy blazer paused, her eyes narrowing. As she watched the scene unfold, Claire Morgan, a flight attendant for the airline, had seen her share of gate disputes, but something about this one felt different. The twins' composure, their quiet dignity in the face of Susan's hostility, stirred something in her, a mix of admiration and unease. She wanted to step in, to say something, but the fear of repercussions held her back. For now, she watched. Her hands fidgeting with her badge dot, the clock ticked to 6:39 p.m. The boarding call was imminent, and the crowd at Gate 47 was growing restless. Ava and Lila stood at the center of it all, their faces calm but their hearts racing. This wasn't just about boarding a flight anymore. It was about proving they belonged, not just in first class, but in a world that too often questioned their right to exist in it. The hum of Terminal C at LAX grew sharper, the air thick with the weight of anticipation as Susan Hayes stood over Ava and Lila Carter at Gate 47. The digital clock above ticked to 6:42 p.m. Its red glow a silent countdown to the first-class boarding call, now just 8 minutes away. The twins sat poised, their navy blazers crisp against the worn leather seats, but the tension in their shoulders betrayed the storm brewing beneath their calm exteriors. Susan's voice, laced with an authority that felt more personal than procedural, had drawn a small crowd. Passengers nearby, some clutching boarding passes, others sipping overpriced coffee, watched with a mix of curiosity and unease. The businessman in the gray suit, now leaning against a pillar, whispered to his companion, his words inaudible, but his smirk unmistakable. A young couple, their backpacks slung over one shoulder, edged closer, phones in hand, sensing a story unfolding. Ava's eyes flicked to Lila's phone, where the Instagram live counter had climbed to 512 viewers. The comments scrolled faster now. Why is she grilling them? This is so wrong. Those girls look legit. Lila adjusted the angle, ensuring Susan's face was in frame, her pursed lips and narrowed eyes captured for the growing audience. Ava's heart thudded, but she kept her voice steady, repeating her earlier question. Could you explain what you mean by irregular passengers? Her tone was polite, almost deferential, but it carried a challenge that made Susan's foot pause mid-tab. Susan's lips tightened, her glasses slipping slightly down her nose. I'm just following protocol, she said, her voice rising to project confidence, though a slight tremor betrayed her. We have to verify high-value tickets, especially when circumstances don't add up. The pause before circumstances was deliberate, a coded jab that landed like a pebble in a still pond, rippling through the crowd. The businessman snorted softly, nodding as if Susan had confirmed his own suspicions. A mother nearby, juggling a toddler and a stroller, glanced at the twins with a mix of sympathy and hesitation, as if unsure whether to intervene. Lila's thumb hovered over her phone, the live stream now at 789 viewers. She leaned forward, her voice calm but pointed. Our tickets are valid. We've shown you the confirmation email, the receipts, and our credit cards. What exactly doesn't add up? Her words were measured, each one a brick in the wall of their defense, but the slight tremble in her hand betrayed the effort. Ascolta Susan hesitated, her eyes darting to the growing crowd, now a loose semicircle of at least a dozen passengers. She reached for her radio, her fingers fumbling with the clip. This is Gate 47, requesting supervisor assistance, she said, her voice sharp but unsteady, as if she sensed the situation slipping from her control. The radio crackled, and within moments, Ethan Parker, the gate supervisor, appeared, weaving through the crowd with a nervous energy that made his tie bob with each step. Ethan, a wiry man in his early 40s with thinning hair and a perpetually furrowed brow, glanced at Susan, then at the twins, his expression already siding with his colleague. "What's the issue here?" he asked, adjusting his tie as if it could anchor his authority. "These passengers are claiming first-class seats," Susan said, her voice loud enough to carry to the back of the crowd. "But there's obviously been a system error. They probably got upgraded by mistake." Her words were with certainty, but her eyes flicked nervously to the phones now openly recording her. The businessman's companion muttered, probably using their parents' cards without permission, loud enough for Ava to hear. The words stung, but she didn't flinch, her father's voice echoing in her mind. "Never let them see you break." Ethan cleared his throat, his gaze skimming over the twins' boarding passes without really looking. "Look, girls," he said, his tone attempting a paternal warmth that felt patronizing. "Why don't you take the economy seats we have available? No need to make this harder than it has to be. I'm sure your parents will understand." He glanced at Susan for confirmation, who nodded vigorously, her arms still crossed like a shield. Ava's jaw tightened, but her voice remained steady. "We purchased these seats legally," she said, holding up her phone again, the email confirmation glowing on the screen. "We have every right to board." She reached into her blazer pocket, revealing a first-class lounge wristband from their earlier visit, its metallic sheen catching the light. Tucked behind it was a business card, its text too small for Susan or Ethan to read from their distance, but its presence added a layer of quiet authority to her stance. Lila's phone buzzed with notifications, missed calls from their father's assistant, then from Carter Enterprises' legal department, and finally from the board secretary. She declined each call, keeping the live stream running, the viewer count now at 1,247. The comments were a torrent of outrage and support. This is 2025, and this is still happening? These girls are handling it like pros. Call the news. Lila tilted the phone slightly, capturing Ethan's fidgeting hands and Susan's increasingly flushed face. The crowd grew denser, a mix of curious onlookers and indignant supporters. Dorothy Wilson, a retired schoolteacher with silver hair and a warm, weathered face, stepped forward, her voice gentle but firm. "Excuse me," she said, addressing Susan directly. "I could help pay for economy upgrades if that would resolve this." These young ladies seemed perfectly polite. Her offer was sincere, born from a lifetime of witnessing similar slight moments when she, too, had been made to feel out of place in spaces not meant for people like her. Ava smiled, a gratitude genuine but resolute. "Thank you, ma'am, but we already have our seats." Her voice was soft but unwavering, a quiet assertion of their right to be there. Dorothy nodded, stepping back but staying close, her presence a silent vote of confidence. Susan's radio crackled again. "Karen, we need to start boarding. What's your status?" A voice demanded. "Minor situation," Susan replied, her voice tight, requesting further assistance. She shot a glance at Ethan, who was now typing frantically on his laptop, his fingers stumbling over the keys as he pulled up the twins' booking details. The businessman, Richard Coleman, pushed forward, his face flushed with impatience. "Excuse me, but some of us have connecting flights," he said, his tone sharp. "Can't you just remove them and move on?" Ethan nodded apologetically. "We're working on it, sir," he said, his voice strained. The crowd murmured, some nodding in agreement, others shifting uncomfortably, their phones still recording. The young couple from earlier exchanged a look, the woman whispering, "This isn't right," but her partner only shrugged, unsure how to act. Lila's live stream hit 1,847 viewers. The hashtag girls at gate 47 trending locally. Comments flooded in, some vicious, probably fake tickets anyway, but most supportive, urging the twins to stand their ground. Ava's phone buzzed again, the caller ID reading, "Dad, emergency line." She glanced at Lila, who gave a subtle nod, but Ava declined the call, whispering, "We've got this." They've been trained for moments like this, taught to rely on their own strength before calling in reinforcements. The clock read 6:47 p. 5 minutes until boarding, and the air at Gate 47 crackled with the weight of what was to come. Claire Morgan, the flight attendant, lingered near the jet bridge, her fingers twisting her badge as she watched the scene unfold. She'd seen gate agents like Susan before, quick to judge, slow to listen, but something about Ava and Lila's composure stirred a flicker of courage in her. She wanted to speak up, to call out the injustice, but the risk of losing her job loomed large. For now, she stayed silent, her eyes fixed on the twins, her heart heavy with the weight of her inaction. The terminal's fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, casting long shadows across the floor. The crowd pressed closer, their phones a constellation of tiny lenses capturing every moment. Ava and Lila stood at the center, their calm a stark contrast to the chaos around them. They were two young women against a system that had already judged them, but they weren't alone, not with thousands watching, not with the truth on their side. The air at Gate 47 in LAX's Terminal C grew heavy, charged with the restless energy of a crowd teetering between spectatorship and outrage. The digital clock above ticked to 6:49 p.m., its red numerals a stark reminder that first-class boarding was now just 3 minutes away. Ava and Lila Carter stood resolute, their navy blazers a quiet armor against the storm of scrutiny swirling around them. Susan Hayes, the gate agent, clutched her radio, her knuckles whitening as she awaited reinforcement. Ethan Parker, the supervisor, hovered nearby, his laptop screen glowing with the twins' booking details, though his nervous glances suggested he'd already made up his mind. The crowd now, nearly 24 strong, pressed closer, a mix of curious travelers and indignant allies, their phones forming a constellation of lenses capturing every tense moment. Lila's phone, propped against her knee, streamed the confrontation. Live on Instagram, the viewer count surging past 2,347. The comments scrolled in a frenzy. This is straight-up discrimination. Stay strong, girls. Where's the manager? The hashtag girls at Gate 47 trended locally, its reach spreading like wildfire across Los Angeles. Ava's gaze flicked to the screen, her heart pounding but her expression unyielding. She'd shown Susan their confirmation email, their credit card receipts, even their Platinum Amex cards. But the gate agent's refusal to back down felt less like policy and more like a personal crusade. We've provided everything you asked for, Ava said, her voice steady but edged with a quiet challenge. What's the next step? Susan's lips curled into a thin smile, her confidence bolstered by the radio's crackle. The next step is you cooperate, she said, her tone sharp enough to cut through the terminal's hum. Or we'll have to escalate this further. She pressed the radio button again, her voice clipped. Gate 47, security, expedite. We've got a situation. The word situation landed like a gavel, drawing gasps from the crowd. Dorothy Wilson, the retired schoolteacher who'd offered to pay for economy seats, shook her head, her silver hair catching the light. This is shameful, she murmured, loud enough for the young couple nearby to nod in agreement. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, his tie now askew from constant fidgeting. Girls, just take the economy seats, he pleaded, his voice low as if to avoid the cameras. Don't make this a scene. It's not worth it. Lila's eyes narrowed, her phone capturing his nervous glance toward Susan. Not worth it? She repeated, her voice calm but piercing. We paid for first class. We're not the ones making a scene. The live stream counter hit 3,156. The commence a torrent of fury. They're trying to bully them. Call the news. This is so messed up. Before Ethan could respond, 2 security officers pushed through the crowd, their black uniforms and heavy radios commanding immediate attention. Daniel Lopez, the taller of the two, had a weathered face and a posture that suggested reluctance, his hand resting lightly on his radio. Michael Grant, younger and more assertive, strode forward with a scowl, his name tag glinting under the fluorescent lights. "What's the problem here?" Grant asked, his voice gruff as he sized up Ava and Lila. Lopez's eyes darted between the twins and Susan, his expression unreadable but less hostile. Susan stepped forward, her voice rising to ensure the crowd heard. "These passengers are refusing to comply with ticket verification," she said, gesturing toward the twins as if they were exhibits in a case. "Their first-class seats are likely fraudulent. We need them removed from the boarding area." The accusation hung in the air, a spark igniting the crowd's murmurs. Richard Coleman, the businessman, nodded approvingly, muttering, "About time." But others, a young mother with a stroller, a college student in a hoodie, shifted uncomfortably, their phones still recording. Ava's fingers tightened around her phone, her pulse quickening. She glanced at Lila, whose live stream was now at 4,021 viewers. The comments a chaotic mix of support and vitriol. "They're just kids. Leave them alone. Fake tickets, bad-eyed." "We've shown all our documentation," Ava said, addressing Lopez directly, her voice clear and composed. "We're requesting to speak with someone who can verify our travel arrangements properly." She held up her phone again, the confirmation email still glowing on the screen. Its Carter Enterprises header barely visible but unmistakable to those close enough. Lopez hesitated, his hand moving away from his radio as he studied the twins. Calm demeanor. Grant, however, crossed his arms, his scowl deepening. "You're disrupting the boarding process," he said, his tone accusatory. "That's grounds for removal." The crowd stirred, a low rumble of dissent rising. Dorothy stepped forward again, her voice trembling but firm. "Officers, these young ladies have been nothing but respectful," she said. "They've answered every question. This isn't right." "Ma'am, please step back," Grant snapped, but Lopez raised a hand, his expression softening slightly. "Let's keep this calm," he said, his voice quieter, almost apologetic. He glanced at Susan, who was now visibly flustered, her glasses slipping down her nose. "What's the specific issue with their tickets?" he asked, his tone suggesting he wanted clarity, not escalation. Before Susan could respond, Ethan's laptop chimed with an incoming video call. He angled the screen away from the crowd, but the pixelated face of Margaret Brooks, the district supervisor, was visible to Ava and Lila. Margaret, a woman in her late 50s with a stern jaw and tightly pinned hair, peered through the screen, her patience visibly thin. "What's the holdup, Ethan?" she demanded, her voice crackling through the tablet speakers. "We're behind schedule." Ethan stammered, his fingers fumbling over the keyboard. "These passengers are claiming first-class seats, but Susan has concerns about ticket authenticity," he said, angling the screen toward the twins. Margaret's eyes narrowed, her gaze sweeping over Ava and Lila with a cold appraisal. "Have you verified their identification?" she asked, her tone implying she'd already drawn her own conclusions. "They're minors," Susan interjected, leaning into the camera's view, her voice dripping with certainty. "Probably using stolen cards or fake tickets. I've seen this before." The accusation landed like a stone, the crowd's murmurs growing louder. A young mother, Maria Gonzalez, pushed her stroller forward, her face flushed with indignation. "My daughter's watching this live," she said, her voice shaking. "What am I supposed to tell her about fairness?" Her words hung in the air, a challenge that made Ethan flinch. Ava's phone buzzed again, another call from Dad, emergency line. She glanced at Lila, who nodded subtly, but Ava declined the call, whispering, "Not yet. They'd handle this themselves. At least for now." Lila's live stream hit 5,247 viewers. The hashtag girls at gate 47 climbing national trends. Suddenly, a new voice cut through the tension. "Excuse me, what's going on here?" Emily Nguyen, a local aviation blogger, pushed through the crowd, her camera raised and recording. Emily, in her early 30s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, had built a following exposing airline mishaps. She'd been tipped off by a follower watching Lila's livestream and had rushed to gate 47, sensing a story. "For the record," Emily said, her voice clear and commanding. "What specific policy allows you to question passengers with valid tickets?" She aimed her camera at Susan, who froze, her face paling under the lens. The crowd parted slightly, giving Emily a clear shot. Her presence shifted the dynamic, the livestream counter jumping to 6,012 as her followers joined Lila's audience. Comments flooded in. Yeses, call them out. "This is getting wild." #justice at gate 47. Margaret's single quotes as voice crackled through the tablet, her tone sharp. "This is a private airline matter," she snapped. "Turn off that camera." Emily didn't flinch. "Public terminal, public right to film," she replied, her voice steady. The crowd murmured in approval, a few passengers raising their phones higher, emboldened by her defiance. Susan's radio crackled again, the boarding call imminent, but the scene at gate 47 showed no signs of resolution. Margaret leaned closer to her screen, her expression hardening. "Minors can't purchase first-class tickets without adult authorization," she declared, her voice final. "Security, remove them from the boarding area." The order sent a shockwave through the crowd, gasps and protests erupting. Lopez hesitated, his hands still off his radio, while Grant stepped forward, his posture aggressive. "Ladies, you need to come with us," he said, his voice low but firm. Ava's heart raced, but her face remained composed. "Sort what out?" she asked, her voice cutting through the noise. "We haven't done anything wrong." Lila tilted her phone, capturing Grant's advance, the live stream now at 7,847 viewers. The comments were a roar. "This is insane. Don't let them touch." "You, call a lawyer." The clock ticked to 6:52 p.m., the boarding call seconds away. The terminal's fluorescent lights buzzed, casting long shadows across the floor. Ava and Lila stood firm, their dignity a beacon in the chaos. They were two young women against a system determined to push them out, but the world was watching, and the truth was on their side. The tension at gate 47 in LAX's Terminal C was a taut wire, ready to snap under the weight of every stare, every whispered judgment. The digital clock above glowed 6:54 p.m., its red numerals a relentless reminder that first-class boarding should have begun 2 minutes ago. Ava and Lila Carter stood at the heart of the chaos, their navy blazers crisp against the backdrop of a restless crowd now swelling to nearly 30 passengers. Susan Hayes, the gate agent, gripped her radio, her face flushed with a mix of defiance and unease. Ethan Parker, the supervisor, hunched over his laptop, his tie dangling like a noose as he avoided the twins' steady gazes. Security officers Daniel Lopez and Michael Grant flanked the scene. Lopez's posture hesitant, Grant's aggressive, their presence amplifying the stakes. Margaret Brooks' stern face loomed on Ethan's tablet via video call, her order to remove the twins still ringing in the air. Lila's phone, propped against her knee, streamed the confrontation live on Instagram, the viewer count skyrocketing to 8,912. The hashtag girls at gate 47 trended nationally, its reach exploding across social media. Comments flooded the screen, a chaotic mix of fury and support. "This is outrageous. Don't back down, girls. Someone call a lawyer." Ava's heart raced, her fingers tightening around her phone, but her face remained a mask of calm. "They'd shown every piece of evidence: boarding passes, confirmation emails, credit card receipts, but Susan's refusal to yield had turned this into a public trial. Margaret's decree to remove them felt like a verdict, one rooted not in facts, but in assumptions about who they were, who they could never be. Ava glanced at Lila, their eyes locking in a silent agreement. They'd given everyone a chance: Susan, Ethan, Margaret, even the crowd, to do the right thing. 10 seconds, they'd decided, to see if justice would prevail without their trump card. Those seconds were up. Now? Lila whispered, her voice barely audible over the crowd's murmurs. Ava nodded, a subtle dip of her chin. Lila tilted her phone, ensuring the camera captured both of them. The live stream now at 10,247 viewers. Ava opened her blazer, revealing a small plastic card clipped to her shirt pocket. The text was too small for most to read, but Lopez, standing closest, leaned forward, his eyes widening. A Carter, board observer, Carter Enterprises. Lila mirrored her sister's gesture, her own card glinting under the terminal's fluorescent lights. L. Carter, board observer, Carter Enterprises. The crowd stirred, a ripple of confusion spreading as passengers craned their necks. Carter Enterprises? Dorothy Wilson, the retired schoolteacher, murmured, pulling out her phone to search the name. Others followed suit, fingers flying. Across screens, the soft ping of notifications filling the air. Lopez stepped back instinctively, his hand falling away from his radio. Carter Enterprises, he repeated, his voice uncertain, as if testing the words. Grant, less restrained, scoffed. What's that supposed to mean? He asked, but his bravado faltered as he noticed Lopez's expression. Susan's face drained of color, her glasses slipping further down her nose. Ethan's fingers froze on his keyboard, his laptop screen now displaying a Google search. Carter Enterprises, aerospace contractor, $13 billion annual revenue, primary. Investor in LAX Terminal C. The livestream counter hit 12,000. Comments exploding with revelations. Wait, Carter Enterprises built this terminal? These girls are connected. This is about to get good. Emily Nguyen, the aviation blogger, pushed closer, her camera trained on the twins' ID badges. For our viewers, she said, her voice steady but electric, it appears these young women are affiliated with Carter Enterprises, a major player in the aviation industry. Can you confirm your roles? Her question was directed at Ava and Lila, but her lens stayed on Susan, whose flushed face betrayed her growing panic. Ava's voice was calm, almost serene. As she addressed Emily, "We're board observers for Carter Enterprises," she said, her words carrying the weight of truth. "Our tickets were booked through the company's travel department, fully authorized." Lila nodded, her phone capturing the crowd's shifting energy. "We've been flying first class since we were 10, she added, her tone matter-of-fact, but pointed. "This is the first time we've been questioned." The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a mix of shock and indignation. Maria Gonzalez, the young mother, clutched her stroller, her eyes blazing. "You're telling me they're with a billion-dollar company, and you're calling them frauds?" she demanded, her voice cutting through the noise. Richard Coleman, the businessman, shifted uncomfortably, his earlier smugness evaporating as he scrolled through his phone, reading about Carter Enterprises' $900 million annual contracts with the airline. Susan stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. That can't be right." She turned to Ethan, her eyes pleading for backup, but he was transfixed by his laptop, where a contract document now glowed on the screen. "Section 12.3, he muttered, his voice trembling. "Anti-discrimination. Clauses, non-discriminatory service to all Carter family members and employees." His face paled, his tie now completely askew. Margaret's voice crackled through the tablet, her composure fraying. "What's happening?" "I can't see clearly," she said, leaning closer to her screen. Ethan angled the tablet, his hands shaking. "The girls, they're with Carter Enterprises," he stammered. Margaret's eyes narrowed, her skepticism undeterred. "That's impossible," she snapped. "They're minors. Board observers? Preposterous." Ava reached into her blazer pocket, pulling out her phone. She scrolled to a contact labeled Legal, Rachel Sullivan, and pressed dial. Putting the call on speaker, the phone rang once before a professional voice answered. "Carter Enterprises Legal Department, Rachel Sullivan speaking." Ava's voice was steady, her words precise. "Rachel, this is Ava Carter. Authentication code Bravo 89 Tango. We're at Lax Gate 47, facing a discrimination incident. Full documentation package required." "Understood, Miss Carter," Rachel replied, her tone crisp. "Are you and Lila safe?" "Status of the situation?" Lila leaned closer, her voice clear. "Live stream is running. Witness count approximately 12,000 and climbing. Security has been called to remove us." Rachel's response was immediate. "I'm notifying your father and dispatching our legal team to Lax. ETA 20 minutes. Maintain the live stream and stay safe." Ava hung up, her eyes locking on the Susans, whose face now resembled a crumpled sheet of paper. The crowd erupted in a low roar, phones raised higher, the live stream counter hitting 15,847. Comments scrolled. "Too fast to read. This is huge. Carter Enterprises is no joke. Hashtag justice at gate 47. Emily's camera panned across the scene, her voice rising with urgency. "We're witnessing a potential case of discrimination against two young women affiliated with Carter Enterprises, the company that funded much of this terminal," she said, her words a beacon for her growing audience. Lopez's posture softened further, his hand now fully away from his radio. "Ma'am," he said to Susan, his voice low, "we need to reassess this." Gran, however, remained defiant, stepping closer to the twins. "You're still disrupting boarding," he said, his tone less certain but stubborn. Ava's gaze didn't waver. "We're standing quietly with our tickets," she said. "Other passengers are creating the disruption." Her words, calm but incisive, drew nods from Dorothy and Maria, who stepped closer, forming a subtle barrier of support. Margaret's voice crackled again, her patience gone. "Enough," she said. "Security, escort them to the main terminal. They can sort this out with customer service." The order reignited the crowd's protests, voices overlapping in a cacophony of dissent. "This is wrong," Maria shouted, her toddler stirring in the stroller. A college student in a hoodie raised his phone, shouting, "It's all on video." The live stream counter hit 18,000, the hashtag now trending internationally. Ethan's laptop chimed with another notification, a priority message from Carter Enterprises Travel Department. Immediate boarding clearance for passengers Ava and Lila Carter, seats 1A and 1B. He stared at the screen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "The tickets. They're legitimate," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Susan's radio crackled again, the boarding call now overdue, but she stood frozen, her eyes darting between the twins' ID badges and the crowd's accusing stares. Ava's phone buzzed another call from Dad Emergency Line. She glanced at Lila, who gave a subtle shake of her head. "Not yet," Lila whispered. They wanted to see how far this would go, how deep the system's bias ran. The terminal's fluorescent lights buzzed, casting harsh shadows across the floor. The crowd pressed closer, their phones a relentless archive of the truth. Ava and Lila stood tall, their dignity a quiet rebellion against a world that had tried to diminish them. The real showdown was moments away. The atmosphere at Gate 47 in LAX's Terminal C was electric, a volatile mix of outrage and anticipation crackling through the crowd of nearly 40 passengers. The digital clock above glowed 6:57 p.m. Its red numerals, a stark reminder that first-class boarding was now 5 minutes overdue. Ava and Lila Carter stood at the epicenter, their navy blazers a beacon of defiance against the storm of scrutiny. Susan Hayes, the gate agent, stood frozen, her radio dangling from her hand, her face ashen after the twins' revelation as board observers for Carter Enterprises. Ethan Parker, the supervisor, stared at his laptop, where contract details confirmed the company's massive influence. Security officers Daniel Lopez and Michael Grant lingered awkwardly, Lopez's reluctance palpable, Grant's bravado waning. Margaret Brooks' pixelated face on Ethan's tablet betrayed her unease. Her earlier order to remove the twins, now a liability in the face of 20,247 livestream viewers on Lila's Instagram, with hashtag girls at Gate47 trending globally. Ava's phone buzzed insistently, another call from Dad, emergency line. She glanced at Lila, whose subtle nod signaled it was time. The crowd pressed closer, phones raised like a digital jury, capturing every moment. Emily Nguyen, the aviation blogger, kept her camera trained on the twins, her voice steady as she narrated for her growing audience. "We're witnessing a dramatic turn at Laxgate 47, she said, where two young women, affiliated with Carter Enterprises, are facing removal despite valid first-class tickets." The comments on Lila's livestream scrolled furiously. "This is unreal. Call the CEO." Hashtag justice at Gate47.Ava pressed the call button, putting the phone on speaker. The line connected instantly, and a deep, resonant voice filled the terminal, warm but edged with authority. "Ava, sweetheart, what's taking so long? I've been holding position for 15 minutes. James Carter's words carried the weight of a man accustomed to instant compliance, his tone a blend of paternal concern and corporate power. The crowd hushed, the only sounds the distant hum of air conditioning and the soft ping of notifications from dozens of phones. "Hi, Dad," Ava said, her voice calm but carrying a quiet resolve. "We're having a small problem at Gate 47. Some confusion about our tickets." She held the phone higher, ensuring James's voice reached the crowd, the livestream counter jumping to 25,012. "Confusion?" James's tone dropped, a dangerous calm settling over his words. "What kind of confusion?" The question hung in the air, a challenge that made Susan flinch. Ethan's laptop chimed with another notification, but he didn't dare look, his eyes fixed on the twins. Lila leaned closer to the phone, her voice steady. "They said our tickets were probably fake, Dad. They called security to remove us from the terminal." The crowd gasped, murmurs erupting like sparks. Dorothy Wilson, the retired schoolteacher, shook her head, her silver hair catching the light. Maria Gonzalez, the young mother, clutched her stroller, her eyes blazing. Even Richard Coleman, the businessman who'd earlier demanded the twins' removal, shifted uncomfortably. His phone, now lowered, the silence from James's end stretched, long enough for everyone to hear the low rumble of his corporate jet's engines through the terminal windows. Outside on the tarmac, the sleek aircraft sat poised, its Carter Enterprises logo gleaming under floodlights. James's voice returned, colder now, each word a hammer blow. "They called security on my daughters for having first-class tickets." The question was rhetorical, its weight crushing. Susan's radio slipped from her hand, clattering to the floor. Lopez stepped back further, his hand nowhere near his radio. "Sir," he said, addressing the phone, "I'm Officer Lopez, Terminal Security. We were just responding to a call." "No one's been." James cut him off, his voice sharp but controlled. "Officer Lopez, your professionalism is noted. You'll hear from our security coordinator about training opportunities. Now, who made the decision to call security on my daughters?" Ava pointed directly at Susan, her gesture deliberate. "That would be Susan Hayes, gate agent, and Margaret Brooks, district supervisor." Lila tilted her phone, capturing Susan's crumpled expression and Margaret's pixelated shock on the tablet. The livestream counter hit 30,847 comments. A torrent. This is about to go down. Carter's not playing. Hashtag girls at gate 47. Ace. Brooks. James's voice was a blade, slicing through the terminal's tension. You're both still there? Susan stammered, her voice barely audible. Yes, sir. Margaret's response crackled through the tablet, her composure fraying. Yes, Mr. Carter. James's tone shifted to that of a corporate titan delivering a verdict. Excellent. Let me share some information with you and the... How many people are watching, Lila? 30,000 and climbing, Dad, Lila said, her voice steady but with a hint of pride. The crowd stirred, phones raised higher, Emily's. Camera panning to capture the moment. James continued, his words precise, each statistic a weapon. Carter Enterprises maintains $900 million in annual contracts with your airline. We provided $150 million in direct funding for Terminal C's renovation, where you're standing. Our aerospace division supplies components for 40% of your domestic fleet. Our insurance subsidiary underwrites $2.5 billion in your liability coverage. Our logistics arm handles 15% of your cargo operations. The numbers landed like thunderclaps, each one a reminder of Carter Enterprises' leverage. Ethan's face went ghostly white, his laptop screen now displaying the contracts. Anti-discrimination clause in bold. Susan's glasses fogged slightly, her hands trembling. Margaret leaned closer to her screen, her stern jaw slackening. The crowd was silent, absorbing the magnitude of James's influence. Emily's voice broke the hush, her camera steady. Mr. Carter, this is Emily Nguyen, aviation blogger. What do you plan to do about this situation? Ms. Nguyen, I appreciate your presence, James said, his tone softening briefly before hardening again. First, I want a written apology from Ms. Hayes and Ms. Brooks within 24 hours personal, not corporate, acknowledging the harm caused. Susan's eyes widened, her breath hitching. Margaret's voice crackled. Of course, sir, but... Her tone was hollow. Second, James continued, mandatory bias training for all LAX customer service staff within 60 days. Real training scenarios, role-playing, measurable outcomes. Margaret hesitated, her voice weak. That would be costly, sir. James's response was swift. Ms. Brooks, $900 million a year makes that a rounding error. Third, a new policy, the Passenger Dignity Protocol. No customer will be questioned about their ticket's affordability based on appearance, age, or any discriminatory factor. The crowd murmured in approval, Dorothy nodding vigorously. Fourth, regular audits of passenger treatment, focusing on young travelers and people of color, conducted by an independent third party, with public results. The demands were comprehensive, non-negotiable, a blueprint for systemic change. James's voice softened, addressing his daughters. Ava, Lila, are you okay? Ava's eyes softened, her voice steady. We're fine, Dad. We'd still like to take this flight. Lila nodded, her live stream counter at 35,012. We paid for these seats. We want to use them. Then you'll use them, James said firmly. Captain Bennett, I assume there'll be no further delays? Captain Lavra Bennett, who'd been watching from the jet bridge, stepped forward, her pilot's uniform commanding respect. None whatsoever, sir, she said, her voice calm but authoritative. We'll begin boarding immediately. She glanced at Susan and Margaret, her expression unreadable but pointed. Susan's voice was a whisper. Your boarding passes. Please. Her hand shook as she reached for the twins' tickets, her earlier confidence shattered. Margaret's tablet went dark, her video call disconnected, leaving Ethan staring at a blank screen. The crowd erupted in applause, phones still recording, the live stream counter hitting 40,247. Emily's camera followed Ava and Lila as they prepared to board, their dignity intact. Outside, James's corporate jet rumbled, its engines a quiet reminder of his presence. Ava and Lila exchanged a glance, their bond unspoken but unbreakable. They'd faced a system designed to doubt them and emerged stronger. Their father's support a foundation, but their own resilience the true victory. The terminal's lights buzzed, casting long shadows. The real changes were just beginning. The air at Gate 47 in LAX's Terminal C buzzed with a fragile calm, the tension of the past half hour giving way to a charged anticipation. The digital clock above glowed 7:01 p.m., its red numerals marking the overdue start of first-class boarding. Ava and Lila Cotta stood tall, their navy blazers creased only slightly from the ordeal, their faces composed, but their eyes alight with quiet triumph. Susan Hayes, the gate agent, stood behind the counter, her hands trembling as she clutched the twins' boarding passes, her earlier bravado shattered by James Carter's thunderous intervention. Ethan Parker, the supervisor, stared at his laptop, its screen still displaying Carter Enterprises contract details, his tie now a crumpled knot. Security officers Daniel Lopez and Michael Grant lingered at the edges, Lopez's expression apologetic, Grant sullen. The crowd, now nearly 50 strong, buzzed with murmurs, their phones still raised, capturing the aftermath of a confrontation that had rocked the terminal. Lila's Instagram livestream counter soared past 45,247. The hashtag girls at Gate 47, a global phenomenon, with comments flooding in. They did it. Justice served. This is history. Captain Laura Bennett, her pilot's uniform crisp and authoritative, took charge, her voice cutting through the terminal's hum. Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning boarding for Flight 492, first class. First, she announced, her eyes locking onto Ava and Lila with a nod of respect. Miss Carter, your seats are ready." Her words were a quiet rebuke to Susan, who flinched, her glasses slipping down her nose. The crowd erupted in applause, a wave of cheers and whistles that echoed off the terminal's glass walls. Dorothy Wilson, the retired schoolteacher, clapped vigorously, her silver hair glinting under the fluorescent lights. Maria Gonzalez, the young mother, wiped a tear from her eye, her toddler clapping along, unaware of the moment's weight. Ava handed her boarding pass to Laura, her movements deliberate, her smile polite but unyielding. Lila followed, her phone still streaming, capturing Laura's professional demeanor and Susan's defeated posture. "Welcome aboard," Laura said, scanning their passes with a beep that felt like a gavel strike. The twins stepped toward the jet bridge, their roller bags gliding smoothly behind them, priority diamond tags glinting. The crowd parted, their applause swelling, a testament to the victory unfolding. Emily Nguyen, the aviation blogger, followed. Closely, her camera trained on the twins. "This is a moment of triumph," she narrated, her voice steady but electric. "Two young women have stood up to discrimination and won their right to board." As Ava and Lila entered the jet bridge, the cool metallic air enveloped them, a stark contrast to the terminal's chaos. Ava's shoulders relaxed slightly, her heart still racing but steadied by the knowledge that they'd held their ground. Lila glanced at her phone, the live stream now at 50,012 viewers, and sent a quick text to their father. "We're boarding." "Thanks, Dad." She paused the live stream, her thumb lingering over the screen, a moment of private relief shared only with her sister. "We did it," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the jet bridge's hum. Ava nodded, her eyes softening. "Not over yet," she said, her voice low but resolute. They'd won this battle, but the war against bias was far from finished. The jet bridge's walls, lined with airline posters, seemed to close in, a reminder of the system they'd just challenged. As they reached the aircraft door, a flight attendant, Claire Morgan, greeted them with a warm smile. "Seats 1A and 1B, right this way," she said, her voice carrying a hint of admiration. Claire had watched the confrontation from the sidelines, her earlier hesitation now replaced by a quiet resolve to support the twins, even if silently. Inside the first-class cabin, the leather seats gleamed, the air scented with lavender from the complimentary amenity kits. Ava settled into 1A, Lila into 1B, their movements graceful but deliberate. The cabin was quiet, save for the soft hum of the plane systems and the occasional rustle of other passengers boarding. Ava glanced out the window, catching sight of their father's corporate jet on the tarmac, its Carter Enterprises logo a silent sentinel. She felt a pang of pride, not just for James's support but for their own strength. They'd faced a gate agent, a supervisor, security, and a district manager, and emerged with their dignity intact. Back at Gate 47, the crowd lingered, their phones still recording as Susan and Ethan scrambled to regain control. Susan's voice was barely audible as she announced, "First-class passengers, please continue boarding." Her hand shook as she scanned passes, her eyes avoiding the crowd's accusing stares. Ethan closed his laptop, his face pale. The contract's anti-discrimination clause burned into his memory. Margaret Brooks' tablet sat dark, her abrupt disconnection a sign of retreat. The crowd's energy shifted, some passengers dispersing to board, others staying to discuss what they'd witnessed. Dorothy approached Emily, her voice soft but firm. "Those girls are something special," she said. "I taught for 30 years, and I've never seen such poise in kids their age." Emily nodded, her camera still rolling. "They're not just kids," she said, her voice carrying to her growing audience. "They're board observers for a billion-dollar company, and they just exposed a systemic flaw." Her followers, now merging with Lila's livestream audience, pushed the hashtag to new heights, with news outlets picking up the story. A local reporter, alerted by the viral feed, arrived at the terminal, her microphone ready to capture passenger reactions. Maria Gonzalez lingered, her toddler now asleep in the stroller. She approached Claire, who was preparing to board the aircraft. "I'm glad they got on," Maria said, her voice thick with emotion. "But this shouldn't have happened. My daughter's still watching the live stream. What do I tell her?" Claire hesitated, her badge glinting under the lights. "Tell her to be like those girls," she said finally, her voice quiet but firm. "Strong, smart, and never afraid to stand up." Maria nodded, her eyes bright with resolve, and turned to join the boarding line. Meanwhile, Susan's radio crackled with a new message from the airline's operations center. "Gate 47. Expedite boarding. Corporate is monitoring. The urgency in..." The voice sent a chill down Susan's spine. She glanced at Ethan, who was now on the phone with a higher-up, his voice low and frantic. "Yes, sir. I understand. Carter Enterprises. We're complying." The weight of James Carter's demands, apologies, training, policy changes loomed like a storm cloud. Susan's earlier certainty had crumbled, replaced by a dawning realization of the consequences she faced. Outside, James Carter's corporate jet idled, its engines a low rumble that vibrated through the terminal windows. Inside the cockpit, James adjusted his headset, his face a mask of controlled fury. He'd listened to the tower's chatter, waiting for clearance, but his focus was on his daughters. A text from Lila popped up on his phone. "We're on. Love. You." He exhaled, a rare moment of relief softening his features. But his resolve hardened as he dialed his legal team, his voice low. "Rachel, ensure the airline follows through. I want those audits in place by next quarter." The response was immediate. "Understood, Mr. Carter. We're already drafting the oversight plan." Back in the first-class cabin, Ava and Lila settled in, their roller bags stowed overhead. The other passengers, a mix of business travelers and affluent tourists, glanced at them with a blend of curiosity and respect. One, a middle-aged woman in a tailored suit, leaned across the aisle. "You handled that beautifully," she said, her voice low. "I'm sorry you had to go through it." Ava smiled, her gratitude genuine. "Thank you," she said. "It's not the first time, but we're used to proving ourselves." The aircraft's engines whined as it prepared for pushback, the cabin lights dimming slightly. Ava glanced at Lila, who was scrolling through the livestream comments, now at 55,012. "Viewers. They're calling us heroes," Lila said, a wry smile tugging at her lips. Ava shook her head, her voice soft. "We're just us." But the weight of their actions, their calm, their strategy, their refusal to bend, was undeniable. The terminal's chaos faded as the plane taxied, but the ripples of Gate 47 were spreading, a story that would echo far beyond LAX. 60 days after the viral confrontation at Gate 47, the ripples of Ava and Lila Carter's stand against discrimination had begun to reshape the airline industry, though not without resistance. The Los Angeles International Airport's terminal, once the stage for their public trial, now bore subtle signs of change. Posters promoting the new passenger dignity protocol lined the check-in counters, and customer service desks displayed tablets with a Respect for All app for passengers to report mistreatment. The digital clock above Gate 47 still glowed its relentless red, but the terminal's atmosphere felt different, less frenetic, more cautious, as if the weight of those 55,000 livestream viewers lingered in the air. Susan Hayes sat in a stark conference room at LAX, her Navy uniform replaced by a plain blazer, her name tag absent. She was midway through her 40th hour of mandatory bias training, a program designed by Carter Enterprises diversity consultants. The room smelled of stale coffee and whiteboard markers, its fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows across the faces of a dozen other gate agents. The instructor, a no-nonsense woman named Dr. Elena Foster, projected a video clip from Gate 47, freezing on Susan's flushed face as she demanded the twins' removal. "Ms. Hayes," Dr. Foster said, her voice calm but probing, "what assumptions drove your actions that day?" Susan's throat tightened, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I assumed they couldn't afford first-class tickets," she admitted, her voice low, the words tasting bitter. "I thought their age and appearance meant they didn't belong." The admission hung in the room, met with nods from some colleagues, discomfort from others. Dr. Foster pressed further. "And how did those assumptions affect your behavior?" Susan swallowed hard, her glasses fogging slightly. "I treated them as suspicious, not as customers. I called security without checking their evidence properly." Her voice cracked, the weight of her mistake settling deeper with each session. Across the country, similar training sessions were underway at 850 airports in the airline's network, a direct result of James Carter's demands. The program wasn't without pushback. A group of veteran gate agents had filed a formal complaint, arguing the training was unnecessary and punitive. Their petition, circulated via an internal email chain, claimed the incident was blown out of proportion by social media, but the airline's leadership, under pressure from Carter Enterprises' $900 million contracts, quashed the dissent, mandating compliance. Susan, once a vocal skeptic, now sat quietly, her notebook filled with reflections on bias and accountability. She'd begun to see her actions through the twins' eyes, a perspective that stung but pushed her toward change. Meanwhile, Margaret Brooks, the district supervisor, faced her own reckoning. Her public video apology, released a week after the incident, had garnered 3.2 million views. In it, she sat at a plain desk, her stern demeanor softened by visible regret. "I failed as a leader," she said, looking directly into the camera. I allowed discrimination to occur under my supervision, prioritizing procedure over people. I'm committed to ensuring this never happens again. The apology, drafted with input from Carter Enterprises' legal team, outlined the airline's new policies, mandatory training, independent audits, and the respect for all app. But behind closed doors, Margaret faced internal scrutiny. A faction of senior managers questioned her judgment, and whispers of a demotion circulated. She spent late nights revising training protocols, determined to prove her commitment, though. The memory of her pixelated face on Ethan's tablet haunted her. Ethan Parker, reassigned to cargo operations pending completion of 80 hours of sensitivity training, sat in a dimly lit warehouse office, his laptop now displaying a permanent reminder. Every passenger deserves dignity. The transfer was a blow to his ego, his once confident demeanor replaced by a quiet introspection. He'd avoided the news, where clips of Gate 47 played on repeat, but he couldn't escape the airline's internal memos praising the twins, poised and condemning the systemic oversight he'd enabled. Ethan's training sessions, led by a former civil rights lawyer, forced him to confront his complicity, his failure to challenge Susan's bias. I didn't think, he admitted in one session, his voice barely audible. I just followed. Her lead. Ava and Lila, now back in their hometown of Chicago, had become reluctant celebrities. The hashtag girls at Gate 47 hashtag had evolved into a symbol of resistance, inspiring op-eds, talk show segments, and a growing social media movement. The twins, however, focused on action over fame. They accepted an invitation to speak at an airline industry conference in Dallas, their first public appearance since the incident. The conference hall, filled with 500 executives in tailored suits, buzzed with anticipation as Ava took the stage, her navy blazer a nod to that day at LAX. We didn't want attention, she said, her voice steady, amplified by the microphone. We wanted fairness. What happened at Gate 47 wasn't just about us. It was about every passenger who's ever been judged before they could speak. Lila followed, her presence equally commanding. We're not here for revenge, she said, her eyes scanning the room. We're here for education, for systemic change that protects everyone. The executives applauded, some genuinely moved, others wary of Carter Enterprises' influence. The twins outlined their vision, a scholarship fund, Travel for Dignity, to provide travel opportunities for underrepresented youth. They'd already secured $1 million from their father's company, with plans to fund 500 students in the first year. The announcement drew a standing ovation, though a few executives exchanged skeptical glances, whispering about the PR stunt. Back at LAX, the airline's technological changes were taking root. The booking system now flagged attempts to challenge ticket validity with bias detection prompts, asking agents, is this inquiry based on verifiable evidence? The Respect for All app, launched a month after the incident, allowed passengers to rate interactions in real time, with data feeding into an AI system that flagged discriminatory patterns. Early reports showed troubling trends. 12% of complaints involved young passengers or people of color, data that sparked heated boardroom debates. Some executives argued for scaling back the app, citing oversensitivity. But James Carter's legal team, led by Rachel Sullivan, ensured its continuation, citing the contract's anti-discrimination clause. Claire Morgan, the flight attendant, who'd hesitated at Gate 47, found herself changed by the incident. She'd contacted Emily Nguyen anonymously, sharing stories of other unreported discrimination cases at LAX. Emboldened, Claire began advocating for better training for cabin crew, proposing role-playing scenarios to prepare for tense gate situations. Her suggestions, initially dismissed, gained traction after a memo from James Carter praised her initiative. Claire's badge now felt lighter, her resolve stronger, As she boarded flights with a new sense of purpose, Emily Nguyen's role had also grown. Her footage from Gate 47, combined with Lila's livestream, had been viewed over 10 million times, earning her a book deal to explore corporate bias in the digital age. She interviewed passengers like Dorothy and Maria, whose stories added depth to the narrative. Dorothy, a former teacher who'd grown up in the segregated South, saw the twins as a new generation of fighters. Maria, whose daughter had watched the livestream, began volunteering with a local civil rights group. Inspired by Ava and Lila's composure, the airline stock dipped 4% in the weeks following the incident, a hit that alarmed investors. But James Carter's influence stabilized the fallout, his team negotiating a public commitment to diversity that reassured shareholders. Customer satisfaction scores, particularly among passengers of color, rose 15%, a sign that the changes were resonating. Other airlines took notice, with two major carriers quietly adopting similar protocols, fearing their own Gate 47 moment. Ava and Lila, though, remained focused on their scholarship fund. They visited a Chicago high school to award the first Travel for Dignity grants, meeting students like Jamal, a 16-year-old aspiring engineer who'd never left Illinois. "Travel broadens your world," Lila told him, her smile warm. "You'll see what's possible." Ava handed him a certificate, her eyes bright with purpose. "This isn't just a trip," she said. "It's a chance to prove you belong anywhere." Back at LAX, Susan completed her training, her final assignment, a written reflection on Gate 47. "I was wrong," she wrote, her pen shaking. "I judged two young women based on my own biases, not facts. I'm learning to listen first." Her words, shared with her colleagues, marked a small but significant step toward change. The terminal's posters, the app's data, the twins. Scholarship all were seeds planted from a single moment of courage, their impact growing with each passing day. 3 years after the seismic confrontation at Gate 47, the echoes of Ava and Lila Carter's stand against discrimination reverberated through the travel industry and beyond, a testament to the power of courage and strategy. It was June 2028, and Los Angeles International Airport's Terminal C had transformed subtly but profoundly. The digital clock above Gate 47 still glowed its steady red, but the terminal's walls now featured murals celebrating diversity, and check-in counters displayed digital screens promoting the passenger dignity protocol, a standard adopted by 156 airlines worldwide. The air smelled of fresh coffee from a new cafe named Unity Brew, its proceeds partly funding travel scholarships. The once tense atmosphere had softened, as if the memory of that Friday evening in 2025 had reshaped the space itself. Ava Carter, now 20, stood before a congressional subcommittee on transportation equity in Washington, D.C., her navy blazer a nod to her past, her voice resonant with purpose. The incident at LAX wasn't unique, she told the assembled legislators, her eyes scanning the room. It was a visible example of bias that happens daily in airports, hotels, and beyond. "Our goal isn't punishment, it's prevention." Her testimony, live-streamed to millions, pushed for federal anti-discrimination standards. Citing data from the Department of Transportation, airline discrimination complaints had dropped 34% since 2025, with customer satisfaction among passengers of color up 28%. The Carter Standard, as it was now called, had become the gold standard for equitable service, a legacy forged from a single moment of defiance. Lila Carter, meanwhile, had founded Carter Ethics Consulting, a firm advising corporations on eliminating bias. Her client list included 200 companies, from airlines to retail chains, all seeking to avoid their own Gate 47 moment. In a sleek Chicago office, Lila met a Fortune 500 CEO, her tablet displaying analytics from her firm's Bias audits. Discrimination isn't just wrong, it's costly, she said, her voice calm but commanding. In the age of smartphones, every interaction is a potential viral moment. Her work had saved clients millions in lawsuits while fostering cultures of respect, a mission rooted in her and Ava's experience. The twins' livestream, viewed over 15 million times, was now a case study in business schools. Its hashtag girls at gate 47, a symbol of quiet resistance. James Carter, their father, had leveraged Carter Enterprises' influence to create the Carter Network, a coalition of 200 corporations committed to anti-discrimination protocols. Speaking at the National Diversity Conference, he reflected on his daughter's impact. Ava and Lila taught me the privilege carries responsibility, he said, his voice thick with pride. If you have power, you must use it for justice. His keynote, shared widely online, inspired other CEOs to adopt similar clauses in their contracts, spreading accountability across industries. Carter Enterprises' $900 million airline contracts remained a quiet but potent lever, ensuring compliance. Susan Hayes, once the gate agent who'd sparked the conflict, had undergone a profound transformation. Now a diversity trainer, she stood before a group of 50 customer service reps at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, her blazer bearing a small pin reading, "Listen first." "I was the gate agent at gate 47, she began, her voice steady but vulnerable. "I was wrong. Let me share what I learned." Her presentations, blending her mistakes with insights from Carter Enterprises training, reached thousands, turning her story of bias into one of redemption. Susan's notebook, once filled with defensive justifications, now held letters from trainees thanking her for her honesty, a quiet legacy of her own. Claire Morgan, the flight attendant who'd hesitated at gate 47, had become a lead trainer. For cabin crew, her sessions emphasizing de-escalation and empathy. "Every passenger has a story," she told trainees, her badge now a symbol of advocacy. Her role-playing scenarios, inspired by the twins, were adopted by 12 airlines, reducing in-flight conflicts by 22%. Claire's quiet courage, sparked by Ava and Lila's example, had ripple effects, proving that change could start with one voice. Emily Nguyen's best-selling book, Viral Justice: The Power of Accountability, chronicled Gate 47 and its aftermath, drawing on interviews with Dorothy Wilson, Maria Gonzalez, and others. Dorothy, the retired teacher, saw the twins as heirs to the civil rights movement, while Maria's daughter, now a high school activist, credited the livestream for her passion. Emily's book, studied in universities, argued that power lies in strategy, not volume, a lesson embodied by Ava and Lila's composure. The Travel for Dignity Scholarship, launched by the twins, had grown globally, funding 1,800 educational trips for underrepresented youth. At a Chicago gala, Ava and Lila awarded a grant to Sophia, a 17-year-old aspiring pilot from a low-income neighborhood. "You showed me I can fly," Sophia said, her voice breaking as she hugged Lila. The program's impact was measurable, 78%. Of recipients reported higher career ambitions, their stories shared on the Legacy Stories channel, a platform amplifying tales of triumph. The airline industry had evolved, though not without challenges. Some carriers resisted audits, citing costs, but public pressure and Carter Enterprises' influence prevailed. Federal guidelines, inspired by Gate 47, imposed $10 million fines for systemic bias, with compliance rates up 85%. Other sectors, hotels, retail, restaurants adopted Carter-inspired protocols, with #respect every customer trending as a service ethos. Academic case studies dissected the incident, teaching students how systemic change emerges from individual action. Ava, now studying law at Harvard, aimed to specialize in civil rights. "Education changes hearts," she told a classmate her. Voice firm. Laws enforce compliance, but understanding builds justice. Lila, pursuing an MBA at Stanford, focused on corporate responsibility. Companies shape society, she said at a seminar. They can perpetuate bias or dismantle it. I'm here to guide them right. Their paths diverged but converged in purpose. Their bond forged at Gate 47 unbreakable. The incident's cultural impact was profound. Flight attendants reported kinder interactions. Gate agents felt empowered to challenge bias, and passengers of color felt safer, with surveys showing a 30% increase in perceived respect. The Legacy Stories channel, hosting the Gate 47 documentary, became a hub for stories of justice. Its 2.5 million subscribers sharing experiences of standing up. The twin story, a beacon of Black excellence, inspired countless youth to demand dignity, proving that touching tales of triumph were not just possible, but real. The story of Ava and Lila Carter is a profound reminder of our shared humanity, of how bias can blind us, but courage and truth can heal. Their resilience, rooted in dignity, teaches us that justice doesn't require rage or revenge, only strategy and heart. Gate 47 shows that systemic change begins with individual acts, amplified by community and accountability. It challenges us to listen, to question our assumptions, and to act with empathy, knowing every interaction shapes our world. Their legacy is a call to each of us to stand tall, to document truth, and to build a future where everyone belongs. Have you witnessed a moment of injustice that sparked change? Share your story in the comments below. Subscribe to Legacy Stories on YouTube for more inspiring tales of courage and triumph, where real people prove that justice is possible when we act together. Join our 2.5 million subscribers and be part of a movement for a fairer world. Click now to stay inspired.